You're listening to Spreaker Web Radio.
Hi, this is Nicole Starr with the PTSD Retreat Radio Talk Show. Tonight we have a wonderful guest, Kevin Lake, author of Off Switch, as well as 3 other books. And from what I understand, Kevin, you've also got a few other books in the works, a couple novels, and some short stories to come. Is this true?
Yes, that's true. I put in 10 to 12 hours a day writing, and it's a passion, so it doesn't feel like work. So you can expect a new Kevin E. Lake book, hopefully 2 or 3 times a year, since I do it full time.
Woohoo! So you've got off the chart. Let's see, we've got different books. Let's check out your books here. I moved my page. So we have Off Switch, which is what we're going to discuss tonight, folks. He's also written From the Grave of Babes, Serial Street, and Homeless Across America. Have I got them all?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And was that seriously a rooster I just heard in your background?
Excuse me?
Did I just hear a rooster?
Yes, you did, and that would be an appropriate time to let the folks listening know that I live full-time in the Philippine Islands, and cockfighting, though illegal in the U.S., is a national sport here. So the roosters you hear belong to my neighbors, which surround my house, and they start this around 3:30 a.m. local time. So I never have any problems with sleeping in. It's quiet on Sundays because that's the day they haul them off to kill each other in the cockfighting pits. But the other 6 days of the week, I'm up and early with the roosters, all hundreds of them.
Wow. And I'm the one that lives on a farm. So now, today, you guys, I had him come on here because he's written a book that's all about PTSD. And Kevin, I'm going to let you take it from there because this book is not just a fictitious story for you.
That's right. It's fiction tightly based on fact.
You care to give a little insight into that fact behind the book?
Sure, I will. Basically, Off Switch is a book. It's a novel that involves. There's several main characters in the book, but it basically shows what it's like to have PTSD or have someone in your life who suffers from PTSD try to adjust back into American culture or American society after coming home from war, and just to throw this out there, PTSD is caused in many different ways. You've got rape victims, automobile accident survivors. There's so many ways to contract PTSD. I don't want to take away from anybody suffering with PTSD who didn't get it by going in war, having military experiences. But in the book Off Switch, the PTSD that's addressed is derived from combat experiences and military experiences and deployment experiences. Not always direct combat experiences.
Now, Kevin, your background, you do have a military background, is that correct?
That is correct. I spent 6 years in the Army National Guard. 3 of those years I was on active duty, and I spent 1 deployment in Iraq, in Mosul. I was a machine gunner for a convoy security team in Mosul in 2008 and 2009. So most of the fact in this book, or the fiction is based upon the facts from my own deployment, experiences I had, experiences some of my friends I was deployed with had, and then some of our experiences also when we came back to the U.S. and tried to adapt back into society. So there's a main character in the book. His name is Corey Prine, and Corey's experiences throughout the book are basically experiences that several of us had. They're all just thrown in there together so I could share more of those experiences through one character.
Okay. And now the other main character is also Jennifer. And by the way, folks, as you guys hear me say all the time, you also see it on the Facebook page, trauma is trauma is trauma. So you heard Kevin say he's not taken away from anyone else. And as I've also always told Kevin, this is something I always tell people, you know, PTSD is probably the most equal opportunist we have in the world. It doesn't care about your race. It doesn't care about your location, age, color, background, his financial status, education. So, folks, please keep that in mind. Kevin here is writing from his personal experience as a military individual when he writes this fiction, this piece of fiction. So please keep that in mind. And even though it is based on fact, the story itself is fiction. Correct, Kevin?
That's correct. And I want to piggyback on your statement there. There is a character in the book I mentioned to you before the interview named Dr. Jerry Barnes. He's in the book a psychiatrist who has written a journal called PTSD Nation, the new ism of a new generation. And there are little blurbs throughout the novel at the end of every chapter where a blurb from his journal he's written is put into the main storyline to kind of address some of the ideas or stigmas of PTSD. And what you just mentioned is one of the little snippets we get from Dr. Barnes, where he mentions that just as alcoholism doesn't discriminate from the bum on the park bench or the millionaire in the high-rise on Park Avenue, PTSD doesn't discriminate among those whom it afflicts. So that is important, and we'll discuss this more later, I'm sure, but Dr. Barnes in the book also talks about, things that you might not want to say to a veteran. One of those things being, common sense to those of us who have served in the military is, hey man, did you kill anybody over there? Statements like that to a combat veteran suffering from PTSD would be synonymous to perhaps asking a rape victim how well endowed her rapist was. Asking her to relive her terror. Now, I don't want to compare the two actions. I'm not talking about the actions. I'm talking about the ism that the sufferer has as a result of those actions.
Yeah, you're
so
talking about.
You addressed that.
You're talking about, folks. Let me go ahead and even further clarify that. Remember how I said trauma is trauma is trauma? Well, each trauma is very unique, but the underlying similarity between individuals with PTSD is not the trauma, but the feelings, the emotions, and the reactions to these traumas. Exactly. And so asking, I actually had someone, Kevin, just to give you a little bit of my background, when we were talking about this before, I actually had someone invite me over to dinner when I came back, and I thought it was, to get to know me because I was new into an area, and no, they were inviting me over to dinner, and they asked me to show up in my uniform so I can tell their kids what it's like to kill somebody in war. And they were having all 12 of their kids over, this is Utah, having all 12 of their kids over so I could talk about, what it was like to be a woman and kill somebody and be in the military and killing people over in war. And that was just not okay. And even though I'm sure they didn't mean it, this is one of the big things that I'm sure comes up a lot, and I know you dealt with this as well. They're not thinking. Folks, you deserve to think about these things. If I went up to an individual who's been raped and said, gee, you know what? What was it like to have him just pull you off? And what was it like to have, or if it's a guy that's being raped, what was it like to have a woman outman you?
Yeah.
It really doesn't work. And what's it like to have a bullet, held up in your face, or to have someone,
exactly.
Whatever. It doesn't matter what the circumstances.
Nicole, this book, I actually went through 3 different editors on this book, and the first one I had to part ways with because she sent me a message when she got to the portion of the book where the character Dr. Barnes is addressing this issue, and she said, Kevin, I don't see the problem with asking somebody if you killed anybody in Iraq. Maybe you should take this part out because that's why you guys join the Army, right? To kill people? What is the big deal with asking a veteran if they killed anybody?
Wow.
And that's when I realized maybe it's time to get another editor. Well, and I thought, wow, how many people actually think people join the military to kill people? Yeah. And even when we were rolling out of the gate over there in Iraq to go on our missions, knowing that we might have to do that, even then, that was not what was in our mind. When you're the soldier, the priority is making sure that the man or the woman on your left and the man or the woman on your right comes back home that night inside the safety of that green zone. Mm-hmm. You're not thinking about, I'm going to kill somebody. That's why it's not even about that. Yeah. You don't care about the politics. I had an alleged friend last week tell me that me and everybody else who suffers from PTSD who went to Iraq kind of deserves we're getting what we deserved because we were misled by the Bush administration to be there. It's not about politics. And guess what, civilians? The enlisted men and even the officers in the military, they don't decide where we go to war. We don't decide where we're going to have a war. We take orders and we do it so you don't have to. You know? So, yeah.
Kevin, I can hear... I have to admit that affects me as well, because I've had that same comment told to me. Actually, I was told that very recently, and you'll see a post over on the PTSD retreat in the photos section about that. But I'm going to go ahead and stop you there and just say, folks, it really, obviously you can hear the emotional buildup that this causes in individuals. And Kevin, you've been home for how many years now?
I returned from Iraq in the summer of 2009, so it's been a little more than 3 years now.
Okay, you and I both then got back around the same time, because I was in Afghanistan until 2000. You know, our unit went from 2008 to 2009. So, you know, folks, obviously there's time that's passed by already, and we're from this generation. Let's not even talk about Vietnam, because that's even more years. When people say things like this, it elicits a very unsatisfying feeling within the individual that served, because it has nothing whatsoever to do with politics or anything going on here. It has to do with, hey, this is our job, we got to do our job, and you know what? My job is to make sure my battle buddy gets home. And not only that, but most of the time when we're overseas, we're teaching people how to, clean up their own wounds. We're teaching them how to wash their hands. We're teaching them how to read, to write. We're providing humanitarian aid. We're doing a lot of what I would consider ambassador responsibilities. And that's part of also being a soldier. And so you're hearing some of the emotional response that comes along with that. So I ask that you keep that in mind, especially if your mom or dad or brother or sister and your loved one is coming home. Or if you're a concerned individual, a wonderful, loving American who's watching these guys come home a little bit different than they left, keep this in mind, because none of them went over there to shoot somebody or to kill somebody. They went because they had no choice. That was their job to go. And I know some of you may say, oh, you always have a choice. Well, yes, it's have a choice of do your job or not have that job. So I don't know how many Americans today are going to give up their job, especially in today's economy. So be grateful, and please respect the fact that these individuals have served in this manner, because I guarantee the soldier is the last person that wants to go to war. Matter of fact, they much prefer the days of peace. So, and this is addressed in this book. Now, Kevin, you actually wrote this book not for the individual that has PTSD, but for the families and for the individuals that are dealing with an individual and loving somebody that has PTSD. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that was done for a couple of reasons, as I mentioned to you before when we were talking. I wanted to, primarily, folks, I'm a writer. Okay, I'll get that out there. It's what I consider my full-time job, but I love it, so it doesn't feel like work. I mentioned earlier I live in the Philippine Islands. I kind of have expatriated, and I'm able to write full-time here exclusively, something I couldn't afford to do in the U.S. because of the economy. It's so expensive to live there. So this book, I wanted to write it for two reasons. Number one, I'm a writer. I love to write. And I wanted to share my experiences from Iraq, okay, in literary form. So what I found, though, in attempting to do that is that I couldn't do it from a nonfiction standpoint because of the pain, the anger that came back to the surface anytime I had to relive the issues that happened that is addressed in the book. So what I did is, working towards the second objective of this book, which was to help those, as Nicole mentioned, who live with those who suffer from PTSD, I decided to write it from a fictitious standpoint, come at it from a side angle, so to say, take myself out of the book, but put a main character in whose experiences are based upon my own experiences from some of my battle buddies, these experiences being the experiences we had in theater, in the combat theater, and also back home in America once we tried to reintegrate back into society after coming home from Iraq. So the main character in the book is not the the soldier whose name is Corey Prime, the veteran who's suffering from PTSD, he's a secondary character. The main character is a 38-year-old lady named Jennifer Hutton, who is a licensed clinical social worker at the Veterans Administration Hospital. So it shows what it's like to deal with PTSD, trying to fit back into a very structured society, but not through the eyes of the veteran, because I didn't want to pull this thing off as, oh, woe is me, look at me, I'm a whiny vet with PTSD, give me my pills and a pat on the back and feel sorry for me, which I have a tendency to do. I wanted to give it through the eyes of the person who doesn't have the PTSD, but who understands PTSD and helps and works with those who has PTSD. So that's how Jennifer Hutton became the main character in this book. And that's why the book itself really is designed more to help those who live with someone who has PTSD, not the sufferer themselves. Because PTSD, like alcoholism or drug addiction, is an ism that affects the entire family, not just those who suffers. You know, it's the wife of the soldier who gets punched in the face in the middle of the night when her husband's having a nightmare. It's the kid that gets screamed at because he slams the door too hard, or because she has to go out for that ice cream, you know, while daddy's zoned off on tramadol or citalopram, and he's back in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam even. So don't think that you had to be the military service member to take something away from this book. If you're living with those people, or if you've got those people close to you in your life, you probably stand to gain more from reading this book than they did.
You know, something to mention is that there is such thing as secondary PTSD. If you have a loved one that is dealing with PTSD, please be aware that most likely you are also dealing with PTSD. It's very, very traumatizing to have a loved one suffering from PTSD. It's very traumatizing for children, especially, as well as the wife or spouse. So if you find that you're upset, please go to the PTSD retreat. There's questions on there that can actually help you decipher whether or not you also are dealing with PTSD. Go into the notes section, and you can actually see for yourself whether or not you deserve to go speak to someone. And if you do feel that you deserve to speak to someone, let us know. We'll gladly help you find someone to work with you on PTSD. It's very important. And Kevin, I'm so grateful you brought that up in your book.
Yeah, it's. I'm afraid there's a lot of spouses and children and even ex-spouses out there whose needs are going unmet because so much of our attention in American society is given to the vet suffering from the PTSD, and the attention is needed. Mm-hmm. It's especially now that we've reached record numbers in suicide because of this issue. But there's a lot of spouses out there that need help who maybe feel a bit guilty as if they're taking away from their husband or wife's stigma by seeking help themselves. But listen, like Nicole said, if you feel that you need help, by all means get it.
Yeah. And don't feel that money is an issue, because we will assist you. We have counselors all across the nation, including outside our borders, believe it or not, that are willing to volunteer time to work with military families. And it's not just for the veteran, it's also for the family, because like he's been mentioning, I'm so grateful for you, Kevin, but like he's been mentioning, PTSD is something that affects everyone around you. It's not just you, the individual that served or that was traumatized. It's your family, it's your peers, it's your coworkers, it's your immediate community that's dealing with this. And we have individuals out there that are willing to help you heal as a whole family. Because if you only get help for the veteran, it is my belief, and I say this from a personal perspective, it is my belief that you aren't going to fully heal until you work with the entire individuals in the family. Otherwise, you guys are feeding the cycle of PTSD.
Exactly.
So, but back to the book, Kevin, because you and I are obviously going back and forth when it comes to PTSD here. So, tell us more. And you said you wrote this from a personal perspective, and the main character here is not the soldier, but the individual, the counselor, Jennifer Hutton. So, yes. Why did you choose Jennifer?
Well, I cheat in my writing. I think it's something. It's a way in which most writers, I think, cheat, and that's that a lot of my fictitious characters are based upon real people. Dr. Jerry Barnes, who's in the book, a psychiatrist, was one of my clients in a previous life when I was a stockbroker. I spent 8 years as a stockbroker, and this guy was a retired psychiatrist from Arkansas. And he just, when I needed a certain character, I hadn't thought of Dr. Barnes in years, but he fit. And so I put him in there, slight variation, so his family can't sue me, of course, back in the U.S., the land of litigation. But Jennifer herself is tightly based on someone I know who helped me through the VA. Because let me tell you, folks, a lot of people, a lot of veterans want to come down on the VA and talk about how evil the VA is. They're not helping us. Listen, I personally, it took me a long time, more than a year, to start getting the help I needed from the VA. I'm not going to say that they're the fastest working organization on earth, but once I started working with the people who work for the VA, I got good help. And I had a counselor, and this is the person that Jennifer Hutton's character is based on in the book, who was very helpful for me. I respect this woman, and so she just kind of worked her way into this book. She put herself in this book, or a character based upon her. I got to say that because there's so many lawyers in America. A character based upon her persona put herself in this book, not me. But again, that was to avoid that woe is me standpoint from the veteran and dealing with PTSD, and to give more of an outside the fire looking in look at the struggles of PTSD through her eyes instead of the veteran's eyes.
Wow. What a wonderful tribute to the individual that assisted you. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to talk about, if you're open to it, talking about your military service. Now, you've served in the Army, so, by the way, hooah, because you and I have both served in the Army, and I actually held the same rank as you, so it was very nice to actually hear you mention that. In what positive ways has the military assisted you in writing? And in what ways are you assisting military members now with your writing?
All right. Those are good questions. I'll tell you, I've said this before, and I'll tell you because you asked the question. When I enlisted, I was 33 years old. I'm going to be 39 tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So I wasn't a spring chicken. And when I enlisted, I could have gone OCS and been an officer. I had a bachelor's degree. But I enlisted because of the fact that we were a nation at war and I wanted to do my part. So, you know, get me trained and get me to the front. That's how I did it. I've said ever since I've had my military experiences that if I had joined the Army at 18 and put in 4 or 6 or 8 years first, and then gone to college, and then gone into business, and then done so many of the other things I've done in my life, I think I would have been better at those things, because the Army really does teach you just how many hours are in a day. By God, you use all 24 of them. You're laughing because you can relate.
Oh, I do. I know, because I actually did join immediately getting it. 2 weeks after high school I left. So... Go ahead. Speak on.
Okay.
This choir's listening.
Yeah, well, for instance, when I was a stockbroker, I remember getting to work at 9 o'clock and thinking I was early because the stock market didn't open till 9:30. 9 o'clock is early to get to work, really? Are you serious? We started at 4 in the Army, And it helps me now in my writing because, I've got all these roosters here waking me up at 3:30 anyway, but guess what? I'm out of bed at 4, and I'm in here getting work done in my office at our home 3 or 4 hours before my family wakes up, which is good because through the rest of the day, I don't have to struggle with the feelings of, oh, gosh, I should be working, but, oh, gosh, if I'm working, I'm not with my family, because guess what? I just put in 4 hours before my previous military life. I wouldn't even have had breakfast yet. So
let alone open your eyes.
Also, yeah. Also, from a real-world perspective, we look at people like one of my favorite authors is Stephen King. He went to college, got a degree in literature, and he taught literature in high school for a few years before he made it with his first novel, Carrie. Well, he wrote that in his 20s. He wrote several of his first big hits while he was in his 20s. And there are times when I think, gosh, I didn't really start writing until I was 35 when my first book got published, and even then it was self-published. Well, here's something that the Army's taught me, my experiences in the military and the rest of life has taught me. It's it's okay that I didn't, have all those creative writing classes in college, and that I wasn't tied to my computer through my 20s and 30s writing, because what I was doing instead is I was out there living life. And the best stories are the ones that are so realistic, and a good way to make your story realistic is to base it upon real life events. The Army gave me real life events I would have never had if I had not been in the Army. I never left the country for the first time until I was in the Army. Well, now I live overseas, and I've been to nearly 20 different countries because the Army gave me a sense or a desire to experience other countries, other cultures that before I never really had. Hey, this is America. We're number one. Why would I want to go anywhere else? Well, I still love America. I still think our country, America, is wonderful. But, man, there's a lot more things out there in the world to experience. It's fun. It's exhilarating. And I'm doing that now. And I don't know if I would have done that had I not been in the Army.
Wow. Folks, Kevin, are you open to continuing this in another segment? Because this 30 minutes went by so fast. Are you open to that?
Well, I am, and I'll share with the listeners. I'm especially open to continuing this conversation because, folks, this is the first full-length, meaningful conversation I've had in English in more than a year. So, Wala desain que esa bocaditos americana, but you do understand English, so yes, let's go another segment. I just said you don't understand the sign there in America, so let's continue.
Awesome. Folks, I want to say thank you so much for listening to the segment, and you can listen to the next segment. And in just a few moments, we're going to go ahead and keep going recording, but I'm going to go ahead and close the segment. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to know more about Kevin, you can actually get his books right on Amazon.com. You can look under Kevin Lake, and you'll see all four of his books, including Off Switch, which is what we're discussing today because of how much it deals with his personal experiences of PTSD. And you can go to Amazon.com, look him up. He's got a full bio on there. You can also go to Facebook, because Kevin, is your Facebook public?
My personal Facebook page is not, but I do have an author's page. If you just look for Kevin E. Lake, there's probably 117 of us on there, but it's going to be the one with this really ugly American white guy with this beautiful Filipina girl. That's me. That's me and my beautiful soulmate. You can join that page and stay up to date with my writing and my personal life, see pictures of life over here in the tropics. And I'd love to have you join that page.
And I will have him post a link to that on the PTSD retreat page. So if you'd like to know more about PTSD or get some assistance with dealing with your own or schedule a speaker or a presentation or even a retreat, go to www.facebook.com/theptsdretreat, or you can go to us on ptsdretreat.org. Again, that's ptsdretreat.org. If you have any comments about this segment or would like to reach us, go ahead and write us at support@theptsdretreat.org. And thank you so much for listening. Again, this is Nicole Johnson Starr and Kevin Lake. Thank you so much with the PTSD Retreat Radio Talk Show. Have a great evening, everyone.
This is Spreaker Web Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Nicole Johnson Starr with the PTSD Retreat Radio Talk Show. I'm still sitting here with Kevin Lake, author of Off Switch, which we were discussing in the last segment, and we've moved on. We spent time talking about the book and talking about personal experiences. But Kevin, I would really love to talk about, in the book you talk about substance abuse, and I would love to talk about, your personal experiences with this, because my understanding is that you have a very personal perspective on alcoholism and PTSD.
Yes. I mentioned this in the book and the authors afterward. The book itself, as we've said before, is a fictitious novel based on facts. It's roughly 50,000 words long, barely meeting criteria to be a full-length novel. But there's also an 8,000 word authors afterward in the back where I explain just how much of the novel is based upon fact. And I give my own personal and very humble opinion on particularly the issue of suicide among veterans. If you follow the media, or if you follow this issue in the media, you'll know that we've now lost more veterans from the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq of suicide than we lost on the battlefield. Suicide rates in the military population surpassed that of the civilian population about 2 years ago. And everybody's screaming, why? And I really feel we're not looking at the obvious. If you Google suicide, the best minds on that matter will tell you that the number one leading cause of suicide is depression, and the number two leading cause of suicide is substance abuse, be it drugs, be it alcohol. Well, I'm a genius, I'm far from it, but I don't think it takes a genius to see that in the case of suicidal veterans and veterans who are committing suicide, those criteria are being met because, number one, as far as the depression goes, depression is tightly wound within the ism of PTSD itself. And then number two, substance abuse. This is an area in which, in an attempt to help, I personally believe we're messing up with our veterans. There's so much dope out there being pushed through the VA, being pushed through the private sector for those seeking help in the private sector that, in my opinion, and for me, is doing more damage than the PTSD itself. And that's addressed in the book, and I don't want to give any spoilers to the book, but you'll find that with the main character in the book, that is an issue that leads to demise. And you know, Nicole, you mentioned my personal experiences with substance abuse, addiction. I mentioned in the novel, during the afterword, that I abused substances given to me by the Army, the pain pills, the Vicodin, given to me by the VA, the tramadol, the freaky psychedelic drugs I was on. I was on 7 prescriptions by the time I left the States and left the VA. Now, today, I'm on none of it. I know that there's going to be shrinks out there that say, oh, my God, we'll get back on those pills. Let me tell you something, people. Those pills were doing more damage to me personally than the PTSD, okay? I shared with Nicole during our break that I'm an alcoholic, aside from having PTSD and just being a total nut, as my close friends would call me. And I had almost 8 years of continuous sobriety under my belt. I sought treatment for alcoholism in the year 2002, and I found a way that worked for me. I got 7.5 years of sobriety under my belt. I thought the doors on addiction for me were shut and closed and locked and would never be revisited again. Well, I got injured in Iraq. It was a non-combat related injury. It was a duty-related injury, and this is addressed in the book. But one of the things that the book addresses that isn't addressed by Hollywood and the war stories we see is some of the things that go on during a deployment that aren't always made public in the eye of the public, and that's abuse of leadership. Well, I was injured in Iraq, and I was denied medical treatment for about 4 months, and so something that should have taken maybe 2 weeks to fix ended up costing me a 6-month stay in the Army hospital when we got back. I was in the Warrior Transition Battalion at Fort Lewis for 6 months, getting help and recovery from an injury I got in Iraq. I had surgery, and these things could have been avoided if I would have been allowed to seek treatment in Iraq. But my leadership threatened with Article 15's reduction in pay, all these punishments if I were to go to the doctor. And again, I don't blame the Army, and I don't blame the National Guard. I was a National Guardsman. I blame toxic leadership that exists in the military and in the private sector. It's out there. And it's taken me a few years to resolve this. I used to hate the Army. I used to hate the Guard. I don't. The Army, the National Guard, the VA, they're filled with wonderful people doing wonderful things. We just had some toxic leadership that denied me and some of my friends medical attention. Now, back to my point about addiction. When I was in the Army hospital, I was in so much pain I couldn't walk upright. I couldn't carry more than 10 pounds. I had an injury in my groin region. It was misdiagnosed originally as a hernia, but they later found out it was actually a disconnected epididymis. That's a big word. What that is it's the tube that connects to male's testicles, not female's testicles, but male's testicles. Yeah, you're welcome. that carry sperm actually became disconnected from my testicle, and this happened during a PTSD test, one of the many we were forced to take while in Iraq, while in a combat zone, performing combat mission. It was crazy, but my body just gave out. It just snapped. You know, 36 years old. We were exhausted. My body broke. I wasn't allowed to get treatment for it. So by the time I got to the hospital, I was in so much pain. I had an infection in my inguinal canal from where seminal fluid was actually in my inguinal canal. My groin area was swollen. That's why they thought it was a hernia. But anyway, they gave me Vicodin. I was hesitant to take it because I was aware of my addictive tendencies, my alcoholism. But I said, you know what? I can't walk. I can't roll over in bed at night without waking up because of the pain. So I started taking it, and it worked. It took care of the pain, and it reopened a floodgate for me that, like I said, I thought had been locked and closed, and I'd never visit again. The floodgate of addiction. And again, by the time, fast forward 2 years after that, I was on 7 different medications, different pain pills. I had relapsed in my alcoholism. I had started drinking again. I spent about 2 years out there drinking again, drinking on top of these medications that I was receiving from both the Army and the Defense Administration, doing more damage in my life and to people around me in my life, my family, my friends, associates, innocent people who would cross my path.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and stop right there real fast. Folks, are you listening to this? He's not just saying that PTSD affected him and that this issue affected him. It's affecting everybody around you. So if you think that your issues are not affecting somebody, you guys know I'm military. I'm not going to pull punches here, and there's no sugarcoating. If you're doing something like this, it is affecting your loved ones. No matter what you tell yourself, be totally clear about that fact. Everything you're doing is affecting those around you because they love you and they care. So be honest with yourself and know that I normally say this earlier, Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and say it now. Folks, what is being stated in here is what worked, what did not work, first off, but then we're going to go into what does work for Kevin here. And please be aware, if there's any changes, if you're on medication, there are people that it has worked for, but if you're on medication and you want to stop that, please do not do so without letting your doctor know. Please share with them, especially if it's somebody you trust. And if you'd like to know more about alternatives, you can actually talk to us, and I can actually get you in touch with some nutritionists and some holistic doctors. And I do say doctors because these guys have trained in holistic medicine and all naturopathy. So I think I just created a word, but please please talk to them and don't do this alone. There's wonderful support. And Kevin, I know you made some drastic decisions for you that have helped you a lot. Would you say that you did it all by yourself?
Not at all. Fortunately for me, no matter how much of a maggot I became while I was back in the throes of active addiction again, I've had people in my life who care about me. I have taken drastic measures. I do live in the Philippines, outside of the country. Culture is an amazing thing, and Nicole, you and I talked about this earlier. I don't want to give too much of your past away, but you actually lived in Asia yourself for many years. There are really a lot of good things about American society. I love America. We call it politically correct in America. We're sensitive towards others, and that's good in so many ways. But one of the problems is that we're very stigmatic, and everything has to have its place. And I was struggling with trying not to be put in that box labeled crazy war vet. So I was dealing with trying to get back into American society, live the life I wanted to live, and stay out of that box and all the other boxes. We've talked about my writing. I've written 4 books. I'm writing 10 to 12 hours a day now. I can do that here in the Philippines because $1 US is worth 42 of their dollars. And on what little bit of money I get from the VA disability because of my PTSD, my back, which was destroyed by the body armor, tinnitus in my ears from all the loud noises, gunshots, all that.
What was that? I'm not sure I heard you. What?
Oh, anyway, what I wanted you to hear was that I can actually focus on writing full time here, and I can live like an upper middle class American, because I'm taking advantage of the currency conversion, the economics of scale. Well, when I was in Iraq, there was a night towards the end of the deployment where we were rolling across the Arabian Desert. I was driving. I was usually the machine gunner, but we trade off places every now and then. And my two battle buddies were asleep. We were out of the combat zone. We were in Kurdistan, up in the north, where there was a much more relative degree of safety. It was 2 a.m. I was looking at the stars glistening over the sand, and I made myself a promise. And I said to myself, if I'm fortunate enough to make it home, I'm going to focus more on making a life and less on making a living, no matter what I got to do that. And that, for me, is pursuing my passions, and my passion is writing. So I've come to a third world country to pursue my passion because I can afford to do it. And also because it allowed me to, what worked for me with the PTSD and getting off the crack the VA was giving me with all these different names on the sides of the bottle, and getting off the alcohol again. It was basically getting away from the noise, getting away from the triggers, getting away from things that made me angry. In America, and God bless them, other people in my life wanted other things for me. They wanted me, I mentioned earlier, I've been a stockbroker for 8 years. And guess what? I made a lot of money when I did that. When I left, I was making $10,000 US a month. But it wasn't me. I hated it. I didn't want to go to work in the mornings. Okay, I think yesterday I made $8 selling books. But I'm out of bed at 4 a.m. here to write my books because I love it. It is me. And I'd rather, like Rocky says in Rocky 6, I'd rather do something I love badly than do bad by not doing something I love. We can't please other people. And when you're trying to, plus you're struggling with PTSD, and then you've thrown addiction into the picture, it's a mess waiting to happen. And I had a plan, and that was a wake-up call. I had the plan to exit this world prematurely, and so I took those drastic measures. I came here. I avoid people, places, and things that I learned to call before slippery slopes. There are other, they call us foreigners here in the Philippines, and there are other Americans here, and most of them are vets. Most of my American friends here in the Philippines are Vietnam vets who couldn't fit back into society when they got back, and they came here. I've met people that have been here for 30 years and haven't been back to the States. But I've found that for me to keep my sanity, I've got to stay away from them, even though they're wonderful people, because the topic always comes up of what happened to us in the war, how we were treated when we got back. And yes, my generation of veterans were treated much better than the Vietnam veterans who made it back. I've got a dear friend here in the Philippines. I'd love to be around him every day, but I've got to limit my time around him because, he starts his day with a bottle of booze. He gets through the middle of his day with a bottle of booze, and he ends his day with a bottle of booze. And for me, I found that dumping booze and dumping drugs on my PTSD is like pouring gasoline on a fire. And this is addressed in the book. The book does go towards mostly those living with people who have to live with people who have PTSD, but I address the veterans, and I make it clear through my own experiences, if you have PTSD and you think diving into the bottom of a bottle is where you're going to find the answer, I found that that's the wrong answer. And so I can't do it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm gonna interrupt there. And Kevin, you and I discussed something that I'd never shared in a public forum about my own parents. And you guys, if you think that you can't step away from the alcoholism, that it's the only way you can do it, I'm telling you, where there is a will, there is most definitely a way. Kevin, you went, I didn't share this, but I actually had to get off medication from after being hit with a car. And I had to get myself off of Oxycontin, got a hydrocodone, Percocets, Lortabs. I was on all of these things, and I had to get myself off. And I went and detoxed myself at home. And I can't imagine I've been doing that for years and years and years. And my stepfather actually had been drinking. Stepfather, before he was killed, drank just to get up in the morning, drank throughout the day, and drank to get himself to sleep. And if he can go cold turkey after doing that for decades, remember Vietnam was back in the 60s or early 70s, decades, you can do it as well. And Kevin, you've done it. correct?
Well, and I don't want to be cocky about it because I did it before. It lasted 7.5 years, and I found myself there again for another 2 years. I've done it so far today. Now, you mentioned cold turkey. If that works, it works. There are many different avenues to sobriety, kicking addiction. There are 12-step programs. Give it a try. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, get away from it and go a different route. There's more than one answer. But the point I want to bring home is that the drugs and the alcohol is not the answer. That's the anti-answer. I've been blessed with a few people who truly love me and that have been sympathetic. I have a wonderful soulmate here in the Philippines, and Nicole pulled up my author's page on Facebook during the break, and first thing she said was, "Oh my God, she's beautiful."
You guys, you don't know beauty until you look at his loved one. She is stunning.
Her name's Dearly, and she's beautiful, and
you guys have a 2-year-old son now.
Say I'm in the Philippines with 12-year-olds. She's almost 26 years old. Okay, we have a son that's 2 years old. They love me unconditionally. That has helped. I'm not going to push religion because I'm.
Kevin, are you there? Kevin, I think you may have accidentally hit mute. Are you there? Okay, you guys, we've been doing this via Skype, and looks like I've lost Kevin.
I'm back.
Can you hear me now? Back. Okay, phew. Because I was about to close this segment and try and get you back. You know, we gotta love technology, folks, because before this, 20 years ago, this would not have been possible just to pick up, or not even pick up a phone, but just hit a button on Skype and instantly we're talking over there. And so I'm really grateful that you're back, Kevin.
Yeah, hey, me too. No, sorry, I don't know what happened, but what I was saying is what's worked for me also is having a contact with a higher power. I call it God, and I'm not pushing religion or AA or any of that stuff here. And it's important for me to stay in contact with the higher power. And the ways I do it here is during the day I'll get up in the mornings. As a self-publishing writer, I've got 3 parts to my job. I've got to write, of course. I've got to read other people's work because I'm a follower of Stephen King's mantra that to be a good writer, you've got to read a lot and you've got to write a lot. So I try to write 1,000 words a day, and I read 2 to 3 novels a week. I've read nearly 60 books year to date. And then thirdly, I've got to market my own stuff. So a lot of you have probably seen my spams coming across on Facebook. That's how we met, actually, Nicole.
Yep.
But it works.
Yeah, it did. And I called you up. What are you doing?
Exactly. So, but also at the end of that, I've got to take time for myself and connect with that higher power. And I love to jump on my mountain bike, ride out to the beach. I don't live on the beach, but I can get there in about 30 minutes. I'll bike up the beach or walk up the beach. I'll sit underneath the banana trees. You cannot sit under coconut trees. That's a myth because those coconuts will fall and they will kill you. I've seen so many people hospitalized here for sitting under coconut trees. But I'll sit under a banana tree or maybe a mango tree and watch the waves come in, and I'll pray. I'll pray, I'll meditate, call it what you want, and time goes by. And that's important because that keeps me based and it keeps me from getting angry. A big trigger for me for both the PTSD and the only hope I have at staying off of the substances is to control the anger. I cannot allow myself to get angry. And the beaches of the Philippines, the tropical climate, my beautiful soulmate, those do magic things for me as far as keeping me away from anger.
Yeah, you actually bring up something that's actually really close and dear to my own heart. Folks, you've heard me say it, and I'll say it again ad nauseum, so get used to it. It doesn't matter who you call God. I don't care about your religion. I could care less about your religion, but I do care about your personal faith. Because when you have faith in something, someone, some higher power, whatever you choose to call it, you give yourself permission to seek assistance from that higher power. Even if that higher power is you, for you, you're giving yourself permission to let go and just be. And by doing that, you're releasing stress, your body is relaxing, You are becoming more at one with yourself in that moment. And I personally, myself, I actually will, it doesn't matter where I am. I could be sitting on the John having a wonderful load released in a different way, and I will do that. I take every moment that I get. I will deep breathe, and folks, you've heard me talk about sacred space, and many of you have actually learned that during my retreats. I create my own secret space, and I can jump right into it whenever I need to, just to have that private moment. And it's so huge for me. As a matter of fact, when I was going and detoxing, that sacred space made it a lot easier to deal with the shakes and the creepy crawlies, as I call them, from getting off that stuff. And especially because I couldn't just jump up out of bed and go, because the body was not able to do that. But I'm really grateful for those sacred space. And Kevin, you are in a beautiful location to actually to do that. But you guys, you don't have to have a beautiful place. Close your eyes, create it. And for those of you who still have difficulties closing your eyes and creating it because other things pop up, find a spot. Go to a pool and just sit there. Go to a puddle and sit there. Go sit on the toilet and poop. It doesn't matter. Find your space for you. Hey, come on, Kevin. You know there's relief there.
Yeah, that's some really good psychological advice there. You go take a big load. I like that. You can tell you were in the military, Nicole.
Hey, we say it like it is. So, but anyway, go ahead and continue. Continue. Especially when
well, that was pretty much the point I want to bring home. The easy way is to take that anti-answer, numb yourself with the drugs and the meds. And I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a licensed clinical social worker. I am not giving medical advice. I'm not qualified to do so. But from my own experiences, the medications that I was on that were meant to help me hurt me more than they helped me. They took me back to a place I've been before where I was not the same person I am today. I was a dirtbag, and my life, I don't want to live my life that way. So I've done what I had to do to get off the crack again. And it's easier for me to have the unpleasant memories at times and to feel bad at times than to not know what day of the week it is and to feel nothing at all. And that seems to be all those medications were doing for me. Now, I do have chronically inflamed lower lumbars in my back from the body armor on my back. And I was trying to live in cold regions in the U.S. I'd gone back to West Virginia, my native place, for a while, and I'd spent time in Washington State where it's kind of cold and rainy. And there were days that even on the medication, I couldn't get out of bed because of the pain, because of the climate. Well, here in the tropics of the Philippines, and I mentioned this in the author's afterword of the book, I can live relatively pain-free without that. I was an avid runner for 25 years. I ran track in high school and college, and I was good at it at one point. It was a way of life for me. I can't run anymore because of the discs in my back. But again, instead of giving up, and turning to the bottle or staying on the drugs, I turned to mountain biking, which I'd done in the past too, but now I just do more of it. I love to swim in the beach here. I'm in a location where I can live pain-free and med-free, and for me, that's the only way to live. I'm not saying that I might not move to Florida someday, because I might. I might go back and forth again, but for now, this is what's working for me, and I want to give it a little more time to work before I start making changes. Because like it's been said, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it.
That is definitely true. And folks, this is what's working for him. I'm repeating that. Find what works for you. And it's not the same for every person. As much as I would love to live in the Philippines, that doesn't work for my family because my husband's job is here, and we have the PTSD retreat here. Okay, I can do the PTSD retreat in Philippines. Yeah, I could definitely do that. Kevin, when you need me to come out and do a retreat, let me know. But you're
welcome anytime. We've got a spare room. You're our welcome guest anytime you want to fly over.
Oh man, happiness.
Yeah, so you'll be here tomorrow, right?
What do you mean tomorrow? I'm already on the plane. But find what works for you and make it work for you. If you don't like where you are, if you're not happy where you are, guess what? You have the power to change it. You are a very powerful individual. Nothing can hold you back, not even PTSD, but you. You are the only thing that can keep you from doing it. And if you've chosen to let someone else hold you back, guess what? You can change that as well. And Kevin's found something that worked for him. Wow, this 30 minutes went by so fast, Kevin.
Again.
Yeah, no kidding. You guys can find whatever works for you. And that goes for, if I'm going to tell you right now, my personal opinion, I'm not able to, I can give my personal opinion all I want, but for you, you get to find what works for you. And my personal opinion is that substance abuse, drugs, any of that, especially in conjunction with PTSD, does not work for you. It doesn't work for anybody, and it most certainly doesn't work for your loved ones who watch you through it. Or if they're not able to watch you through it, hey, you're kicking yourself out of your loved ones' lives. Choose differently. Choose the end to life. Choose to make a difference for yourself. Choose to change your world and make it better. And Kevin, again, thank you so much for doing this segment. I'm gonna, you guys, I'm gonna kidnap him and make him do it again. So,
wow.
Thank you guys for listening.
Nicole, thanks for having me, and I'd love to continue a conversation in English.
Anytime. Now tell me how to say, thank you in Tagalog. Or is it? It's not Tagalog. It's Cyan.
It's called Visayan, but you say thank you in Visayan and Tagalog in the same way. The languages are very closely related, and you say salamat.
Salamat.
S-A-L-A-M-A-T. Salamat.
Oh, salamat. Okay. So how do I say thank you for being here?
Say salamat. Ako Deri, which
Salamat
means
Ako Gami, right?
Deri, like dairy, but you gotta roll the tongue because their culture has a thick Spanish history.
Okay.
Salamat Ako Deri.
Okay, Salamat Ako Deri, like that.
Close enough. You'll get it when you get here tomorrow, as my guest. And then the way you would say you're welcome to all of this is you would say Walay sa payan. In Visayan, walay sa payan. In Tagalog, their other language, you say walang anuman.
We'll stick with.
How about you're welcome?
You're welcome, exactly. And you guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been the PTSD Retreat Radio Chat Show. I'm Nicole Johnson Starr, and this has been Kevin Lake. And have a great evening.